Tickets on sale now.
Lens Rentals versus Lenny's Rentals. Difference number 7.
At Lens Rentals, our goal is simple: share the best available equipment and educate and provide support to our customers to ensure they can achieve their goals, regardless of experience level.
Sharp, dedicated, focused. Just one more reason to use Lens Rentals. LensRentals.com. Shoot with the best.
Hello, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Midwest Gaming Classic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Garris, panel director of the Midwest Gaming Classic. Jeremy Parish of Retronauts, along with Brian Clark and Kevin Bunch, are on hand to discuss the greatest RPG ever, just like they did last year with Final Fantasy VI. This year's greatest RPG ever is Chrono Trigger, the time-hopping Square masterpiece that is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Don't miss it, as they'll explain why this time they're right. This is the greatest RPG ever. And you know what? Enough of me talking. Why don't we get to the podcast?
Alrighty. As our last, wow. This is a full room. Yeah.
You guys are great too.
Not as great as Chrono Trigger, but I appreciate the thought.
It's close.
It's all because Steve Hack, in the last presentation, kind of gave a preview and advertised this. Okay, so we have the Retronauts here. They're to talk about the greatest RPG ever. Take it away.
This week in Retronauts, I asked you to use your imagination. Hi everyone, welcome. This was supposed to be a visual presentation, but for some reason, it's not working. So I'm going to ask you to visualize the things that we're talking about. It's a really great slideshow. We're going to have an awesome time up here. I hope the same can be said for you out there. Let's quickly introduce ourselves. Oh, look, it's such... I wish you could all see this. We should turn our backs to the audience and you guys can squint at the screen.
Like Michelangelo's David.
Yeah, exactly. It's wait, what? There's no nudity here. So this is Chrono Trigger, 30 years, the greatest RPG of all time. There's an asterisk after greatest because we refuse to commit. So I'm Jeremy Parish.
I'm Kevin Bunch.
I'm Brian Clark.
And usually there is a pretty different Retronauts mix at this show, but everyone's scared to travel internationally right now for some reason. So it's us. You're stuck with the American folks. So let me present to you the question: what is Chrono Trigger? You've heard of it, right? Well, I'm going to give you a rundown anyway, otherwise we're not going to fill an hour. It's a Super NES role-playing game, debuted in 1996, published by Squaresoft at the end of the system's life, near the end of the system's life. It dragged on for a little while longer, but after this, that was kind of it. That was the last of the big shows, other than Yoshi's Island, Street Fighter Alpha 2. Originally, this game cost about $90, $80, $90. There's a lot of talk this week about the cost of next generation games for different consoles, but I gotta say, Chrono Trigger was a time traveler, appropriate to the theme of the game, and looked forward ahead 30 years and said, we are gonna price ourselves like a 2025 game. And that was in 1990s dollars, which were very strong and powerful. And yet, I would argue that game was worth every penny. I certainly paid that much, and I wrung $90 of entertainment out of it and then some.
What extra chips are they putting on games these days, I ask?
This didn't actually have any special, extremely unusual chips in it. There was no Super FX. There was no
RAM, maybe?
What's that?
RAM?
I mean, it was a big ROM, but it didn't have the chip that they used in Street Fighter Alpha 2 or anything like that. There was no encoded data. There were no songs that had to be compressed like in Star Ocean and so forth. So it was just a big honking game, and that's why it cost a lot.
Just the Toriyama tax then.
Right. And it was $90. $90 for a game that was like 15 hours long. And yet, nevertheless, it is the greatest asterisk game RPG of all time. I have a little clip here which was going to be very funny and appeal to those of you who like Mad Men. Let's see if you can hear the audio at least.
This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Don Draper. Thanks for leading that. All right. So, it's now talking time. And there's a funny graphic here of the guy from Clash of Demon going, because it's at talking time in the game. But you can't see that. Guys, when did you first play Chrono Trigger?
I'll let you go first.
I got it and Final Fantasy VI, 3, I suppose, the same Christmas. And so...
That was probably all your parents could afford to give you.
Yes. It was the greatest Christmas I'd had until that point, and it would be the greatest Christmas that I have for the rest of my entire life.
It might be the greatest Christmas of all time.
Yes.
The greatest Christmas asterisk.
Yes.
As for myself, I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power thinking, wow, this game looks really cool. I don't know that I can afford it. And flash forward a few years to when I had a job in high school, and I was at the Gibraltar Trade Center in Michigan. Woo! See, someone else knows what it is. We were discussing this earlier. And at one of the booths there, someone was selling a boxed copy for $70, a whole $20 price cut. And I picked that up, and I played the absolute crap out of it for a couple of years straight.
That's a lot of Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
But it does lend itself to that kind of play. So myself, I bought it, I think, launch day. I pre-ordered it, and it was very, very expensive, so I traded in my copy of Final Fantasy 3/6. I wasn't fortunate like Brian. I had to pay for it myself.
But you got to play Final Fantasy VI sooner than I did. So
that's true. I wrung the content on that one too. I played it like 3 times through and said, that's probably enough. I need to move on. So then Chrono Trigger I bought and quit my summer job so that I could just sit around playing it. And then I didn't have any more money again. It's really great how it just kind of feeds itself. So here we go into the time warp, which if you could see, you'd be like, oh, Chrono Trigger graphics, but you can't. So the question is, why is it the greatest asterisk RPG of all time? You may well ask. And we're going to answer that. But generally speaking, the TLDR is the stars simply lined up, and it's just one of those things. It just was one of those games where everything fell into place and made it amazing. So point 1, I've got a 10-point list here because everything, we think in terms of, tens, decimals. It was created by the Dream Team. And that's not the Dream Team that Nintendo would tout a year later for Ultra 64. This was not about Crystal Dynamics, or no, Robotech Crystal Dreams made by Game Tech. That's
I was going to say, this isn't about Game Tech
here.
And Midway.
Nope. The Dream Team in this case were Yuji Horii. There's from Dragon Quest Rocket Slime, the Chrono Trigger Super Tank with a King Slime sitting on top. If you could see this, you would be like, that Jeremy Parish, he put together a great presentation. Yuji Horii, of course, is the creative lead behind Dragon Quest since its beginning and continues to be. Someday we will see Dragon Quest 12, or even hints of what Dragon Quest 12 is, and you'll be like, that Yuji Horii is back at it again. The rest of the Dream Team comprised Hironobu Sakaguchi and Yoshinori Kitase, who I have represented here with Mog and Umaro, as their most recent project had been Final Fantasy VI. Sakaguchi would kind of drift away from the games at this point and go on to make a movie, which was certainly a personal choice, and Yoshinori Kitase would make some of the most successful RPGs of all time, with Final Fantasy 7, 8, 10, etc. But you have Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy combined here. Amazing. And finally, there is Akira Toriyama, who in this case is a frog-looking guy, because we don't know what he actually looked like. He never showed his face, so we just assume he looked like the king of the frogs that lived in Chrono Trigger.
He was Toripo, the guy who was in Blue Dragon and Dragon Quest, the guy who was wearing the gas mask.
Yeah, he always wore a
gas
gas mask.
Supposed to be him.
We don't know.
Yeah,
So
could be anyone.
I mean, the frog is probably in disguise too. But you have 4 highly respected industry veterans getting together, bringing 2 very different sensibilities to this game.
It really feels like this is where this was them at the height of their power, so to speak, too. Because we had Yuji Horii coming off of Dragon Quest V, and I think 6 was coming out around the same time. Yeah, following up Final Fantasy VI with this is absolutely wild. And Toriyama finally got to take a break from drawing Dragon Ball for 10 years. So he got to sleep and rest and work on Chrono Trigger.
And you still had, well, I guess one active person was Shonen Jump, but one person formally, so you were still kind of feeding the Shonen Jump machine with this too, with all its like promotional cycles that Dragon Quest had always benefited from up until now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you check my YouTube channel, I've got a video rip of a VHS tape that V-Jump magazine distributed just to promote Chrono Trigger before the game came out in Japan. And I paid a lot of money for that tape, but it was worth it. Just like Chrono Trigger itself. It's like, here's some kind of music that's a little off from the final version. That's such a great relic. How would you guys describe the difference between Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest? Because they do have very different creative ethoses?
I feel like, for my money, Dragon Quest is willing to be a lot more traditional in terms of like mechanics and what you're actually doing, but and the storylines as well. But they're also willing to be a lot sillier with character designs and enemy designs and the jokes, so to speak.
And like Final Fantasy is almost by its definition something different every time, right?
Yeah.
Whereas they never, I mean, I don't want to say never, but rarely would they ever take those kind of leaps with the Dragon Quest team. Like one is inherently more experimental.
When they tried to make Dragon Quest IX a sort of action RPG, the outcry from fans was so powerful and profound that they actually went back and changed how the game worked. They changed the fundamental gameplay of Dragon Quest IX just because they realized this is not going to go well. So people expect certain things from Dragon Quest, whereas Final Fantasy, people want things, but I think also they've learned at this point, like, who knows what Final Fantasy 17 is going to be like? It's anyone's guess. So point 2 for what makes Chrono Trigger the greatest asterisk RPG of all time is that it has a fantastic cast of characters. And I would say this is something that kind of shows the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy combination together, because Final Fantasy is really good about giving you named characters who have motives and quests, but isn't always great at sort of building up an emotional connection to them. Sometimes it does. But a lot of times it doesn't. Whereas Dragon Quest, I think, is really about building an emotional connection, not just to your party, but to everyone you meet in the world. And I really feel like this is the game where they managed to really kind of combine that approach and make you really care a lot about the cast of characters. And part of that is the way they're written, but also it's because they are all distinct in combat, and they all work together in an interesting way in combat. And so it really kind of, the characters work across the spectrum. And there are 6, spoilers, 7, playable characters. The main guy, his name is Chrono. You can tell he's not the real hero of the game because there's no H in his name, it's just Chrono. Who is the real hero? That you may ask. I don't have the answer. Chrono doesn't really say anything. He says nothing except in one of the bonus joke endings. He likes cats. If you could see this presentation here, every time I click forward, a new cat appears around Chrono's portrait. It's a really great gimmick. I wish you could see it. He has cool hair. There's another cat. Extremely good in combat. And that's important because he's the guy you're stuck with most of the game. And he is extremely good at killing things. He's a good kid, but he's really good at killing stuff. You have Marl. Marley? Marl?
Marley.
It's Marl, but it should be Marley.
It's absolutely her real name, don't worry.
So in the Japanese version, her name is Nadia? It's like she's...
It's in the U.S. version, it's
yeah.
Nadia, yeah.
So her name is like short for Nadia, that she goes by in the Japanese version. And they try to do that with the English version, so she's Marl, but her real name is like Marldia or something. It's not good, but she's the rebellious princess, and I would be too if my parents had named me that. There's a funny picture of Joffrey Baratheon here that says the seed is strong, because the game really kicks off in earnest when you travel back in time and you meet Marl's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, who looks exactly like her. So like the Baratheons, or rather the Lannisters, honestly, they're blonde, there's just a likeness across the ages. And also Marl is the moral center of the story. If it weren't for the fact that she cares about the lives of people she's never met, people who would live 1,000 years after she does, this game would go nowhere. You would just be like, well, okay, yeah, the future is really bad, let's go back home and enjoy the time we have. No, she says, let's save the future. And that involves traveling back to caveman times for some reason. There's Luca, the genius inventor. She's the one who kind of actually sets the entire events into motion because she's really, really good at inventing, but not so good that her time or her warp device doesn't undergo catastrophic mistakes and accidentally send royalty into the wrong time era. So everything happens from having to chase down the princess and save her in a different way than like a Mario saving the princess kind of way. Luca's also, I think, a really great character because she's sort of, in a way, the player's sort of window into caring about some of the characters who are added to the party later. Like, because of her compassion for Robo, a machine. Like, you really want to adopt Robo into your party. And she's grossed out by Frog, but then decides, you know, Froggy, you're not such a bad guy after all, I think is what she says. And Frog, he is a frog. They named him creatively. I'm repping Frog here. My pens, also my socks, but I'm not going to show you those. So he is a frog, and that is his secret burden. He is cursed. He's actually a very handsome young man named Glenn, but you don't get to see that except in one of the secret endings. So instead you have to play with Frog the whole time. You can actually, so he's the one character where you get to make a moral choice beyond like, oh, we gotta go save the world, which is forced on you. In this case, you can say, I'm going to let Frog get his revenge, or I'm gonna recruit a really cool character. Now you may think if he gets his revenge and breaks the curse, you get to play as Glenn the rest of the game, but you don't. You're still stuck as Frog until the ending. So I think it just proves that revenge leads to nothing, leads to nowhere.
They weren't going to animate a whole new set of sprites just for that. I mean, they might have. This game is wild.
So additionally, you have Robo, who is, yes, a robot. Much like Generation Alpha, he is born in a post-apocalyptic world. And Robo is a great character because he's a mechanical character. He's a robot. And so therefore he has a unique relationship with both magic and with time. One of the things about Robo is that he can't cast magic like the rest of the party can because he's a robot and he doesn't have midichlorians or whatever. But also there's a really cool side quest where you take advantage of the fact that he is a machine who will basically live forever if maintained properly, and are like, hey, go live through a time loop for 600 years and save this forest. And he does it because he's a robot and he does what you tell him to. There's also Ayla, who actually, she's a human and she doesn't have magic, but that's because she was, I guess, born before midichlorians.
I guess.
She's an awesome cave woman. You should not mistake her for some other awesome time-traveling cave woman, and I've got a picture of Leela from Doctor Who here that you can't see, but she's cool. She's got a knife. Ayla doesn't need a knife. She uses her fists, and it still makes her the strongest character in the game, because she is from a time before people learned to pull their punches. She's a woman of little grammar and littler clothing. And finally, spoiler alert, Magus. If you haven't played this game, you should leave the room about 30 seconds ago. Magus is the conniving evil villain, but if you choose not to kill him with Frog in an optional event, he will join the party. Is he a hero? Maybe, but he is central to the storyline, the main plot line that involves a big hedgehog from space. I've got a picture of Guile, not from Street Fighter, from Chrono Cross here. Magus may be the only character who actually returns to be playable in Chrono Cross, but the creators were very cagey about that and didn't do anything with it, so who knows. And Magus is interesting because he's very powerful, but he's an outsider and doesn't have the simpatico and the synergy with the main cast. So if you want to maximize his abilities in battle, you have to make sacrifices. You have to give up accessory slots in your inventory, which are very precious and do cool things. If you want him to be able to really, really team up with your party and blow the bad guys away, you got to make some tough choices.
He only has triple attacks or something, doesn't
No, he only has magic and he can do dual attacks.
Okay.
But to do triple attacks, you have to equip a special thing. And it's specific to each of the techs. So it's not like you can just give him an ornament that lets him triple attack with everyone. It's like this ability, give up your item slot to cast one really powerful spell with everyone else. So, do you guys have a favorite character?
I feel like, I go back and forth, but I feel like Ayla ends up in my party all the time just because she wallops everything so hard.
Even though he's a little fiddly to use, like Jeremy said, it's Magus. The scene where you're fighting him, going up to that castle and in that battle, he could not be my favorite character after that.
All the characters have themes, their own theme music, but his theme is the best. It's like spooky, epic combat music, and that's his character theme. That's cool. I'm kind of with you, Kevin. I really like Ayla mainly because of her utility in combat. She's got a great double attack with dual attack with Chrono, where she hits everything in a straight line across the screen because he just chucks her. He's like, go for it, cave woman. It's the fastball is special. She's Wolverine, and it's awesome.
She does have that Wolverine energy, it's true. She might even be short like Wolverine.
No, I don't think so.
She's
probably ridiculously tall.
Is she Canadian like Wolverine?
She lives in primordial Canada.
Yeah, there you go.
Before they had drawn the boundaries. So the third point in what makes Chrono Trigger so good. Whoa, we're dawdling. We need to move faster. We were just talking about this. It's got a great combat system. In a sign of impressive confidence, Square called this the Active Time Battle 2 system. They said this is the Final Fantasy battle system, but the next one, it's twice as good. And they were correct. It's kind of got the real-time turn-based thing seen in Final Fantasy. And here I've got a sample video of combat, which that doesn't do you any good. So I'm gonna if you are a Retronauts patron, I'm going to put this keynote up on the Patreon. So when this episode goes up, you'll be able to see this presentation that I spent about 5 hours putting together. And you're going to say, wow, that was a real waste of time, Jeremy Parish. So the thing about combat that makes this 2.0 and not just Active Time Battle 1, it's not just about the real-time turn-based thing, but also the placement of your characters, their positioning on screen, has a huge impact on how the battle flows and what options you have available to you. Whereas in Final Fantasy, everyone just lines up and just takes turns running across the screen to hit a guy. Here, everyone's all over the place, and you have to kind of look and see, what abilities do I have available right now, and how do they impact enemies? How do they work relative to my position, enemies' positions, and so forth? Basic attacks you choose to stab someone, you're going to run over to stab them. If you choose Luca to shoot someone, she's just going to shoot from where she stands. But when you use text, those are generally proximity based, whether it's based on an enemy's location and maybe there's like an area of effect, or an area of effect based on where you attack from, or like I said, the Ayla has the one that just goes straight across the line. These all are kind of spur of the moment decisions you have to make. You have to kind of take into account the palette of abilities available to you at any given moment and where you are relative to the enemies. And that's really, really interesting and keeps combat constantly fresh and varied from battle to battle. There's another video here where the people are fighting. Good music, at least. Okay, yeah. On top of that, there's the elemental system, which Chrono Cross really built up, maybe a little too much. But every character has their own innate affinity: fire, ice, water, light, shadow. And you can build a team with complementary abilities. So like a really well-balanced team is Chrono and Marl and Luca, because you've got lightning, you've got ice, and you've got fire. But you can just say, I don't want a balanced team, I want a team that's really cool, and pick the 3 shadow-based characters, Ayla, Robo, and Magus, and leave yourself very vulnerable to certain enemies and kind of useless against others, but that's a pretty cool team. So maybe it's worth it. Well, more combat. So here I have a video of Luca fighting Son of the Sun. She's a fire-based character, he's a fire-based enemy. Will it work out? Were they meant for each other? I don't know. You'll have to watch the keynote when I post it to Patreon to find out. And then finally, on top of the text, you have combos. Instead of being called magic spells, it's called text, like techniques, I guess, or technologies, in Robo's case, I don't know. But you can combine these texts into combos. You can have 2 characters team up and use a combined attack, or in many cases, once you learn the basic abilities required, you can have 3 characters, all 3 characters on screen at once, team up. And this is a really great system because, one, the combo texts are just existing single character texts combined. So it's not like you have to learn special abilities, it's your characters combining their abilities in an interesting way, and all the dual texts kind of build off of that. Like, Chrono has an ability where he can just spin around with his sword and hit things. But if you're teaming up with Luca or with Marl, they can cast an elemental force on your sword while you're doing the spin. And so, hey, voila, you're hitting them with magic and with melee attacks. So you're hitting them for twice as much damage. It's a really, really neat and well-designed system. And you also have the triple text, which are the same thing. So the challenge with text, the downside, is that it does tie up your characters. It's not like one character says, I'm using a triple attack. When you do that, all 3 characters have to commit for that entire turn. So there's kind of an opportunity cost. So again, it's, in battle, you're always making these kind of spur-of-the-moment decisions and kind of doing these trade-offs and deciding what's going to happen, how am I going to approach this, how am I going to play this. And, here's a cool triple tech against Lavos. Oh well. Speaking of what you just heard, this game had an awesome soundtrack. It was created by Yasunori Mitsuda, who loves Celtic music but restrained himself here to go more fusion jazz prog. And it has some contributions by Nobuo Uematsu of Final Fantasy, because Mitsuda kind of worked himself sick and was sleeping under his desk for a while, and eventually had to tap out. And Uematsu stepped in and covered for him.
You could be forgiven for not knowing that this is Mitsuda at all. I feel like if you listen to his more modern stuff, which, as you said, is very Celtic.
It is, but there are some other game soundtracks that he's done that kind of cross the threshold between the jazz prog style of Chrono Trigger and the Celtic style that you get in Chrono Cross. Really, actually, Chrono Cross is a good combination.
That's
of those.
true.
There's a lot of that in there. Yeah. I think it's a testament to Chrono Trigger's soundtrack that it's the first video game to inspire an acid jazz fusion remix soundtrack called Brink of Time. If you've never heard it, it's got scrambled eggs on the cover for some damn reason. I don't know. But it will scramble your brain because it's acid jazz fusion. Like, video games can do this? It's amazing. Do you guys have any particular favorite standout bits of the soundtrack?
You know, we talked about Magus's theme earlier, and that's always been one of my favorites. It's so good. And the way it builds as you go through it. Perfect for a big epic fight against who you'd think is a final boss, but isn't.
Yeah, and also it has really great character themes. Oh my god. It's the first video game to rickroll you. The Chrono Trigger is the peak of Super NES technology. There are some more advanced games. I mentioned the compressed song in, I think, Tales of Fantasia and Star Ocean 2. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is basically a PlayStation game with a few drop frames and a lot of load times. But in terms of just a seamless experience, Chrono Trigger is about as good as it gets. Do you guys argue against that?
No, I would definitely call this, a top 3, most impressive Super NES game just across the board.
All right, what's the other? What's the other two? I'm putting you on the spot.
Put me on the spot, huh? Well, I am always going to go to bat for Super Mario RPG. I just like the music and the art style in that one a lot too. And oh god, what would be number 3? Oh no, I'll just say Yoshi's Island. That's a good lazy choice.
Yeah, that system really peaked at the end.
I'll wake up at 2 a.m. in a cold sweat, I should have mentioned that other game.
There's always social media to address your errors.
Exactly. I think this is definitely the most technically impressive Super NES game the most people have played, if nothing else. Because some of those other ones, you can get into, I'm blanking on the one I was trying to think of before this, but yeah, if you look at Star Ocean and things like that, it's that never even came here.
And it was $150 in Japan.
So
no one bought that.
Exactly.
Rendering Ranger, I guess, maybe. That's another impressive.
Oh, that has got a reissue
and things like that.
At long last.
So yeah, we mentioned the fact that Chrono Trigger sounds great, and this clip you can actually enjoy. Well, aside from the sound effects. But what great music.
How could this not have been an acid jazz album? I ask you.
That doesn't sound like any other video game soundtrack of that era, ever, at all. It's so different and so distinct, and it sounds so good.
And it was Mitsuda's breakout, too, which is the crazy part. It's not that he'd never done any sound work before that, but he was never, this was his first soundtrack that he largely scored himself, and, what a debut.
Yeah, this game looked great. I've got a really cool image here of the courtroom scene. I don't have to show it to you because you know it by heart. It's so good. And also that ties into the music because Mitsuda just totally said, you know what would be really cool? The trial music from Pink Floyd's The Wall. I'm just going to put that here. Chrono Trigger is actually not that big a game. If you look at the map, which you can't do because it's not on the big screen, but there aren't that many places to go in the world. But you're crisscrossing back and forth between time, so there's added depth and layering to each of the limited locations that you can go to. And I think the small scale of the game is important. The small size that was possible for a game that looked and sounded this good on, within the limitations of an NES ROM, because it gave the creators hard boundaries that they had to fit into. And that would go away the next generation of PlayStation, and I think kind of sometimes to these very creators' detriment, they got a little carried away, and I've got a photo, an image here of Dragon Quest VII, someone hunting for a tiny medal. If you know, you know. But Chrono Trigger is just right, and there's a little sprite of Marl cheering right here. She agrees. So point 6 in what makes Chrono Trigger. Subtitle. Give it away next year's talk. What makes it so great is that it makes maximal use of the time travel concept. I feel like there had probably been some games about time travel before this. I think there was a game called Time Twist on Famicom Disk System. Surely there were. Someone's played it and apparently regrets it. Okay, so yeah, I feel like there had been some time travel games, but nothing like this, where time travel is baked into the concept and they really just make the most out of it. It sets up the premise by just kind of letting you goof around for a while at the Millennial Fair, and then it starts to drop story at you and pulls you in bit by bit until you're really engaged and you want to see what's happening. There's some mystery to it, and then it starts to resolve, and just when you start to figure things out, oh, you end up in another time zone altogether and the world's over. That's a great escalation, I would say. And then once it kind of builds up the concepts and stakes and kind of gives you a clear picture of how did this happen, what's all behind this, it sort of just sets you free to resolve the crisis at hand kind of on your own steam. And you never have to wonder why the story matters because it's laid out very clearly. Humanity is going to be stuck in a little bunker eating nothing, just always being hungry and sad and wearing gloomy gray clothing. So there's a clear mission, but you know what you need to do. You figure that out, and you have a lot of freedom in how to go about it. And along the way, there are lots of interesting set pieces, like the trial I mentioned, and then that gets kind of an echo through time later on. Just lots of great self-referential elements, and it just feels like, nothing is wasted.
I was going to say...
Oh, that's right, there's a race, yeah. If you could see my screen, I've got a little clip of a Johnny cartoon up here, but again, sadly no.
It reminds me a little bit of like Dragon Quest III, how 2/3 of it is very like linear, and then you get into the part where you can just sort of do whatever you want in whatever order to make your way to the final boss. And Chrono Trigger is kind of the same way, even though it doesn't really feel like it's really like directing you, which is what is so really impressive about it.
Yeah.
You go to these different time periods, feel like, oh, I can just wander around, do whatever. But like there is a very specific chain of events. But once you get to a certain point in the story, it's like, okay, go nuts, do what you're going to do.
You kind of had that with like Final Fantasy VI too, but obviously you didn't get to travel through time there.
No, you were stuck in the apocalypse
Yes,
there.
you have nowhere else to go.
So the thing about Chrono Trigger is that the game is kind of broken not into locations but also eras, and each era contains a character. Pretty much every era that you go to, there is a character that you can recruit into your party. Every era has its own kind of story element or concept that it puts forward. I've got a photo or a screenshot of Inhaza here, the city of dreams, where people are musing, pretentiously about fate and predestiny. Each era contains a link back to the main plot, which of course involves the space hedgehog that's sleeping and dreaming, kind of like Cthulhu but spikier, and with an alien duck or something inside. I'm not really quite clear how that works. But there's something in each era that ties back to the central story. At the same time, each era also has an ambitious kind of minor villain who isn't necessarily related to the main storyline, but is sort of seizing on the chaos of the situation to grab power or wealth or something. And so you have to kind of resolve these problems in each time era, in addition to solving the overarching story. And again, that's something that's very, very Dragon Quest. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
It is very Dragon Quest.
Time travel is constantly growing more convoluted and more expansive as you play through the game. It's kind of like in a Metroidvania where you gain new navigational abilities. This is not a Metroidvania. But you gain new means for traveling through time. Like initially, it starts out there's just gates that take you from one era to another. And then when you get a fourth party member, you go to the end of time because there's a guy there who's like, oh, you can't time travel with that many people. That's against the rules. and then you get a time machine that just sits there, kind of like H.G. Wells' time machine. The world changes around it, but it's not going anywhere. But then later, you put wings on the thing, and it lets you fly around through time and space, much like a TARDIS. So many of the story details span multiple eras. There are characters who have legacies that continue on through the ages. There are collectibles that you need to pick up in one era and do something with in another era. There are certain collectibles where you can pick them up in an early era, but if you just touch them but don't actually take them, they'll power up over time. And if you go back later in the game to a future time era, they'll be like an enhanced version of the item you could have gotten. So there's that kind of fun risk-reward. It works really well here. It's not. I think they took this idea for Final Fantasy XII and that spear that you were supposed to, like the ultimate spear, yes, and did a terrible job with it, and it makes many people angry. But yeah, the final chapter of the game it constitutes a huge chunk of your playtime, and it's a totally free-form opportunity to just travel through time, figure out, like, as I think Gaspar says, someone close to you is in trouble or has a problem, go solve this before defeating Lavos, but you don't have to. You can just go beat up Lavos, the space hedgehog. So it's kind of up to you, like how deep you want to get into this game. So point 7 is that every inch of this game feels thoughtfully crafted. Like I said, there's a picture of Die Hard here. It says, like a great 80s blockbuster, there's not an ounce of fat on this game. It's like a John McTiernan movie, where it's just like every bit of dialogue, every character, every incidental thing that shows up on screen matters in some way. And maybe that's a little too scripted and cute, but it makes for a damn good game experience.
The video game equivalent of a tight 90.
Yes, a tight 15.
Yeah.
It's just 15 hours, not 15 minutes. Yeah, Chrono Trigger does a great job of introducing its characters, the skills they have, the time travel concepts, and then building on those to become increasingly more complex. There are no random encounters in Chrono Trigger. That's a great thing that so few RPGs picked up on. But anytime you get into a battle, someone sat down and said, where should this battle take place? How should it be telegraphed? And how should the screen layout be arranged? How should you face the enemies? So there's kind of, it should feel limiting, I think, but it doesn't. It feels like it's just really well curated, and it just creates this constant sense of, this battle was set up for me to challenge in a different way, and it's going to differ according to which characters I'm using. And it's just very, very thoughtful and it's very well appreciated. You just didn't get that in other RPGs of the era. Basic foes and bosses alike require an understanding of play mechanics and the tactics available to you at any given moment, and even the characters like the New and Johnny end up having an important role in the story. And again, you can't see this, but there was a video that VJump put out that has like a 20-minute animation based on Chrono Trigger, but it's not Chrono and gang. It takes place at the Millennial Fair, but it's Johnny and a New and one of those little fuzzy Killwalla guys, and they're just having goofy misadventures at the Millennial Fair.
That's also where you get the Gato/Gonzalez song too.
Yeah, I think it actually gave it like written lyrics and
yeah.
Actually had lyrics. Yeah, again, you'll have to see that on Patreon, but it just kind of it's the fun sort of lighthearted jump content to Chrono Trigger. Jeez, we are running low on time. Let's just say there's a lot of optional content. You don't have to complete the side quests to work here, but it helps. Side quests can be tiny things, like giving objects to people in different time eras, or huge, like leaving Robo to till a field for 400 years. But everything you do, every optional part you partake of, it has benefits. And you can collect so many cats.
Feel bad for Chrono's mom.
I put 2 8s in here, so it's actually 11. No, there's a lot of replay value to this game, thanks to New Game Plus. Had you guys ever seen anything like New Game Plus before, outside of like Zelda's Second Quest, which isn't the same thing?
I think this is the first game that I've actually seen it call that New Game Plus.
But the idea of beating the game and then carrying over, like Metroid did that.
Right.
But I can't think of anything else that did that, especially not like a large-scale adventure like this. The idea, when you play an RPG, you want to build up from zero. But this game is like, hey, you beat the game, you don't need to start from zero. You can keep all your weapons and all your levels. Just have fun. Like, what's the point of doing that? Well, Chrono Trigger gives you a point. you can max out your stats and basically be as gods, as they said in Xenogears. But basically, the New Game Plus makes it painless to go back and find, as the developer room comment says, 10 different endings to explore all the different permutations of time travel. And, really kind of the big question is, what happens if you beat the final boss before you resolve all these little stories on the side? And it turns out a lot of times you do not get a happy ending. It's not like a bad, horrible ending, but maybe everyone's a reptile. Or, maybe the girls are just sitting around ogling Glenn and Chrono's getting jealous. I don't know. But that's what happens if you jump ahead.
Who among us, though?
Fair enough. So the New Game Plus just gives you the opportunity to do things that you think, it would be cool if I could try this, but it's probably not possible. But eventually you can become strong enough that it is in fact possible to beat Lavos in the Kingdom of Zeal long before the final battle. And instead of Chrono dying, spoilers, you just go to the developer's ending, and Hironobu Sakaguchi's like, nice work. And we just have a couple minutes, but I do want to give kind of the final point that makes Chrono Trigger amazing, which is that even the DS remake was amazing, and that was not always the case. Game Boy Advance, DS remakes of games from the Super NES era were often troubled by washed out graphics, bad sound, cropped visuals, emulation errors, etc., etc.
You all can't see it, but he's calling out Final Fight.
Final Fight 1, too cramped. I don't care if you can play as Guy, it's too cramped. The Final Fantasy Advance remakes were pretty kind of rough to look at and rough to listen to. But not Chrono Trigger. Yasunori Mitsuda actually collaborated with the developers at Tosei to guarantee that it sounded correct and had a great interface. And on top of that, they added some new content, and they brought in all the material from the PlayStation version, like the FMVs, to introduce characters. They just crammed everything that they could into that DS card. Admittedly, sorry, there was a video there, but you don't get to see it. Admittedly, the village building side quest is maybe too much. You can skip that, it's not essential. It's there, but don't do it. So in summary, Chrono Trigger rules. Thank you. Guys, any final thoughts on Chrono Trigger?
The DS, if I remember, the DS remake is the basis for the one that's available on Steam and everything, the Pixel remaster, so that's a great way to play it.
Yes, you can go out to the show floor right now and buy a copy of Chrono Trigger for $600, but you don't have to. You can get it on Steam, I think, for like $10.
Yeah.
You should definitely play it, but please don't pay $600 for it.
Nice.
Any other thoughts, Brian?
No, just don't pay $600.
Well, there you go. Thank you and good night. Appreciate everyone coming here. Kevin and I are going to be running over to the bonus stage immediately to give some presentations, and then at 6 o'clock right outside the vendor hall, there's a book signing, I think, with all of us.
Yep.
So if you have any of our books or would like to buy some of our books and have us deface them, we're available to do that. So thank you all for coming out. Thanks for bearing with us despite the fact that my computer did not do what it was supposed to do. And I hope you have a great time and go play some Chrono Trigger. I want to play some.
And that's the end of this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, hearing from Jeremy Parish of Retronauts and his two special guests, Brian Clark and Kevin Bunch, as they discussed the greatest RPG ever, Chrono Trigger, on its 30th anniversary. We've had the three of them at the Midwest Gaming Classic many times over the years, and we hope to see the three of them plenty more times in the next few years. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and game on.